Hey, what's going on there, folks? Welcome back here to a Friday. Finally made it through the work week. It is Friday, May 10th, 2024, 10:10 a.m. here, California time. Latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D globe shows a 1.7 into the Utah area, also a 3.2 up here outside the Greenland area. All right, we'll get to earthquake activity here in just a little bit. I do want to cover the interesting event that we got going on this evening in terms of the Aurora forecast. The Space Weather Prediction Center has issued a G4 class storm watch, the first since 2005, which is a pretty decent amount of time, right, that has passed. And we're looking at a KP index up around the 8 this evening when things are expected to ramp up. By the way, real quick, let me show you guys the current Aurora forecast as far as the 30-minute time frame goes. Slightly somewhat elevated up here, but you'll see this thing light up similar to this if things go as planned tonight. So there's a couple different pages to check for the Aurora forecast and the view line, so to speak. The view line is going to be the maximum level far as your location down here in the States or anywhere else in the world where you'll be able to see the auroras out on the horizon. Now the overhead green, the red, goodness, if you're up here in the red, you guys are probably going to have quite the show tonight. Look at all of Alaska. I wish I could jump on a plane and drive up there, but I'm here in Northern California. So it's either way, I'm going to try to get out there and see if I can see it later tonight. But this is the view line from the Space Weather Prediction Center. Now the Aurora forecast here from the University of Alaska has a little bit different view line here. And which one is correct? I guess we'll see tonight, right? We'll have to be out there to pinpoint where we can see it. But these guys are forecasting here the KP index of 8 and the view line a little bit further south. That includes areas around Texas, even Southern California. Now, earlier this year, we did have a G4 storm kick up, but it wasn't forecasted. Everything was just perfectly aligned to where it allowed a lot of solar wind stream and that large CME activity to flow in and create some elevated, beyond forecasted conditions. So it's going to be interesting tonight to see if maybe we get something similar. Maybe we'll see G5 conditions spark up. That would be quite incredible. Either way, the forecast calls for a G4 storm. There's a view line here from the University of Alaska. Again, shows almost all the way down to Southern California and even across portions of Texas. And that's for the North America region. Obviously, if you're up into Canada, northern tier states, you guys don't have to worry about looking, at a distance. It's going to be right overhead. The Europe area, this is going to be the region that's going to see the overhead activity and the view line a little bit further south. Let me go right here. This is a little bit more descriptive here where you guys can see the aurora, and it's going to be interesting here tonight. It's something unlike what we've seen here in quite a while. Alaska, obviously, things are going to be amplified out here throughout the evening. Once the sun goes down and things decide to get dark and, events pick up. But right now, we're not seeing any elevated activity yet. The time frame on this, if we look at the time frame, this is from the solarham.com site, pretty useful site to monitor space weather activity. They recently switched from the .net domain to the .com, so update your browsers if you haven't already to the .com site. It looks as though 0 to 0600 is when we're going to start getting the brunt of it. Now, that time frame puts us later this evening. The current UTC time is 17:15. So we have a little ways to go before things kick up here. It's going to be this evening, folks, and overnight, and possibly early Saturday morning as well. Between 06 and 1200 is going to be the peak of it. the brunt of it, so to speak. And of course, things will remain unsettled out here, I'm sure, over the next couple nights. So watch for that tonight. It could happen anytime. It could arrive early. It could arrive maybe, if anything, I think it's going to arrive early, because those were a couple of powerful CMEs that blasted off, and they were moving pretty quickly. Let me show you guys the model here real quick. We did see another long duration X flare last night. Goodness, right when I was going to bed. But here is the solar wind prediction. And this is quite impressive. We don't see this too often here, but look at the series of CMEs that were blasted off. It's almost just like a rapid firing of multiple CMEs, and in the Earth direction as well. Earth going to be in the green dot here. I don't know if I can... Oh, there we go. Blow this up a little bit more. So, I'm counting probably 6 CMEs that have been shot off in our Earth-directed view here on this map, this forecasted map, and it's all pretty much combining into one with a very enhanced and dense plasma cloud, so to speak, that's headed towards this direction here. The plasma density quite sharp here, so it's going to be interesting to see how the Earth's magnetic field responds to this somewhat rare event. I mean, we get CMEs all the time, right? But multiple large ones with a full impact is going to be very studied for sure tonight. The speed up here at which the velocity of this plasma is coming at us is quite high as well. Looks like maybe some of this up around the 800 range once it hits Earth, maybe a little bit higher than that. Here's the Earth stereo A, stereo B. Either way, we got a dandy of a system coming up here tonight. And if you guys have clear skies, let me bring up the windy map here and show you guys the cloud cover forecast here for tonight. Stand by. So clouds right here. It's a pretty useful site. I enjoy it. You can select from many different options here in terms of what you want to look. Volcanic gases, ozone layer. So let's get this back here. Here's the cloud forecast. We're going to shoot for roughly about 11 p.m. California time. So that's going to put it over here. Obviously a little bit earlier in the morning, later at night, however you want to look at it. Midnight, let's see here, about midnight right there. So that's going to be 3 a.m. Eastern time. There's not a whole lot of cloud cover out here along the west coast. We have massive high pressure building out here. You can see it. Cloud cover is going to be here in the white. Now, there's going to be areas out here in Colorado that could probably see the auroras fairly easy, but the cloud cover is going to inhibit a lot of viewing areas out there. Unfortunately, that's the way it looks though right now with this forecast. There's some moisture coming in here. Texas as well. Again, this is about 3 o'clock in the morning or so. A lot of the northern tier states, Minnesota looks prime for seeing the auroras overhead. Clear skies. Washington up here as well, depending on if you have any coastal fog or not. But the general cloud cover view out here for a good portion of the states here are going to be able to see this aurora activity tonight. And this is a view line, again, from the Space Weather Prediction Center. It's I think this could be a little bit further south. This is going to be the overhead. I see some of the green right here overhead into Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, Nebraska. So technically that view line should be positioned a little bit more south because you're looking off on the northern horizon. So you'd still be able to see it, but just not completely overhead like you're going to in Washington and all these other areas where you got green and red. So I'm leaning more towards the Alaska, University of Alaska forecast here, and they got that view line again from the horizon looking north. You got to be out of the city. If you're in Sacramento, if you're in Las Vegas, any other big city, even a small city like 30,000 people or so, you could see you'll have a lot of light pollution. You're not seeing the stars as bright as you would out in the country. So get out there tonight if you can. Maybe you got some friends. It's Friday night, right? Maybe you don't have to work tomorrow. Hang out. Wait for the auroras tonight. Get away from the city, and that way you can see the auroras towards the northern horizon if you're out within this green line here. Now, pending you're further inward, you really don't have to look out on the northern horizon. It should be right overhead and more densely as you head north here into the northern tier states. So it's going to be quite a night. I'm going to stay up watching this. As far as cloud cover goes, goodness, it looks like Alaska around this time is going to have some cloud cover activity. 2 a.m. or so, there's a low pressure system that's going to be not good for aurora watchers up here in Alaska. So 2 a.m. West Coast time, 5 a.m. Still a lot of clear skies. I think the auroras are going to happen before that, before 5 a.m. Eastern time. 2 a.m. Either way, look at this. A lot of clearness out there. No excuse to not attempt to see it. Not really cold weather out here either. It's going to be probably in the 40s up throughout this area. Maybe a little bit colder in certain regions of North Dakota, but we got a lot of clear skies here, folks. And, let's go back here. There's just so much going on right now with the space weather activity and all these large flares. We got a Proton event on top of that from all of the recent X-flare activity. Look at that. And that is not the auroras happening up here across the polar regions, but those are a radio blackout from the Proton event that's currently kicking into gear right now. Last time we've seen an elevated Proton event like this, we've seen some large earthquake activity happening out here on this planet. It didn't take long for large earthquakes to start occurring. And with the arrival of the CME, multiple CMEs, later today and through the morning, Saturday morning, it'll be prime time to watch for some further large-scale earthquake activity. If it doesn't happen, most of the time it seems like it happens within about 24 to 48 hours from the arrival of a massive CME or large Proton event. So we're going to watch the next 24, 48 hours, see what happens. I'll be surprised if nothing kicks up. We'll check out earthquake activity here in just a second, but there's a Proton event kicking up. These are not auroras, but radio blackout being observed across the polar regions because of the bombardment of the charged protons. Aurora forecast right now, again, still, there's a little bit of amplification going on here, but not as much as what we will see a little bit later. Incoming CME detected. So this would be the real-time solar wind stream. You would see speed increase, obviously density, plasma. The BT-BZ component is what you want to watch, this one up here, in terms of how strong the magnetic field reflects the activity here that's incoming. If this stays consistently level here, then it would try to it would prevent some of the aurora activity to occur. But right now it does kind of look like it's splitting open. I don't know when this was taken. It looks like it's a little bit older, but either way, this is just a beginning of all of the CME activity that's supposed to hit us later this evening. And there is the flare chart. Look at that SFI. This is the energy right here, 233. That's quite high with the ongoing evolvement. The evolving sunspot here, 3664, and the source of numerous X flares here recently is it's incredible. Look at the last 3 days of activity. There's our large X flare last night. That was the largest one that this current sunspot here, the source of many flares recently, has produced. It has produced numerous X flares, but that's the largest X flare. It does look like that was another long duration event, so probably sent off another CME Earth directed, and that will arrive obviously after the series of CMEs that are coming at us tonight. Takes about 48, sometimes depending on if it's a slow CME, 72 hours, but it's going to get busy. We're going to have a couple nights here of some crazy Aurora possibilities. Tonight appears to be the main brunt of them, 5 or 6 different ones all tied into a massive cannibal CME that is expected to hit this planet later this evening. Now, looking at the last 7 days of activity here, look at this. Quite an M flare party. X flare as well. There's been 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 X flares, it looks like, and numerous near X flares. So this is, a very dynamic and complex situation here with this sunspot. Again, that's going to be 3664. It almost reminds me of what they drew back in the 1800s when they had that big Carrington event. They drew the polarities and the sunspot there on the sun back when they had that big Carrington event. But this one hasn't reached that level yet. If it's going to, it needs to probably do it before it heads off on the western limb. It is still quite complex here. Noticing, look at this area right here. It is super dynamic. Either way, this whole sunspot needs to be watched for some stronger flaring, continued stronger flaring. Aside from this specific region, our other active region looks like it's gone now, out of sight, out of mind, off on the western limb. That was the area up here. Behind it, it looks like another active region coming behind it, but there's not a whole lot of complexity. Complexity meaning polarities very close together, deep colors, dark colors indicated right here on this sunspot. But I'm not seeing it over here. Either way, we won't worry about it until after this one's gone. But for right now, this one's a showstopper. Seriously, a showstopper. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Elevated threat. Look at that, 75% chance for an X flare. M flare at 95. C flare around 99% chance. Proton event obviously coming in right now. Getting hammered with the charged protons from all this flaring activity recently. And on top of that, on top of all this, we're going to have multiple rounds of CMEs coming in all at once. So it will be rather interesting, to say the least, here tonight. There could be some power issues. Let's go over real quick here to the electric power company dashboard area here now. That's not for tonight. Well, technically, it is still, 5:10, right, on the UTC time. UTC time up here, 5:10, 2024. So UTC time of 5:11, which is going to be here in about 4, 6, 7 hours or so later tonight. As I mentioned, that's when we're starting to see the G4 conditions kick up. Now, there is, obviously some concern, but a lot of these power grids and whatnot do take necessary precautions in terms of preventing any breakdown in their process, with the electrical company. I don't work in that, so I don't know. But, back in October 2005, during those superstorms there, when we seen a G5 condition storm, it did affect quite a few power systems out there. And perfect time for a train. So, these guys are definitely going to be prepared for it as far as the power grid goes, but we'll watch. There could be some issues going on here. As mentioned, during a G4 severe geomagnetic storm, possible widespread voltage control problems and some protective systems will mistakenly trip out key assets from the grid. So we'll watch for that tonight. We're not in space, but they may experience surface charging and tracking problems. Corrections may be needed for orientation problems. So maybe some satellite issues going on. Other systems include, obviously high frequency, low frequency, radio navigation systems could be disrupted. And, as they mentioned here, Alabama and Northern California, typically 45 degrees there, would be able to see the auroras. Again, this could turn into something bigger. This could roll over into a G5 event. You just never know. So we'll definitely have to watch that and keep an eye on things here. This is the let me go back to the double check this here. Yeah, see, it looks like we are starting to get a little bit of the auroras kicking in right now. This is a 30-minute forecast. Mostly over here across the world where people are sleeping late at night, early in the morning, down in Antarctica as well. Not for sure, though, if this is the brunt. I don't think it is. That's supposed to come a little bit later tonight. If you look at this time frame once again here, we're supposed to see somewhat elevated conditions before the main show later tonight. So 18 to 24 UTC time, which is right now, May 10th. Again, we're at UTC time, May 10th, about 17:30. So that would put us right here, in here, a little bit, maybe a little bit in this area, but it does look like a KP index around 5 or so. G1 class storm is was forecasted. But later tonight, here we go. Again, later tonight, 06 to 612. KP index breakdown right here. These guys are showing 06 to 09. So, again, it's going to be an event later tonight and super, super early Saturday morning. Once it's dark outside, right? I like seeing that. I mean, I've never actually seen the auroras, and it's been on my bucket list for quite a while. But I don't want to have to travel to go see it. But I will if I have to. Obviously, if I can't see it here where I'm at in Northern California, I will ultimately, eventually, fly somewhere so I can see it. But again, we got clear skies. A good portion of the states here will have clear skies as well. So we'll have to watch that later tonight. All right, so let me look at the latest flaring activity. M flare here recently starting to come back up into the M flare category. We'll watch that sunspot area for some further strong flaring. And I'm sure another CME was blasted off from last night's long duration X flare, which was a decent one as well. That was the X 3.9, the largest one that 3664 has produced. Now, so far, this solar cycle 25, we've been fairly minimal in terms of how big these flares are. We have seen obviously larger flares in the past, but right now it's been, at least with this solar cycle, somewhat moderate. These things can get way bigger, trust me. So last night's flare, the X 3.9, was the fourth largest flare this solar cycle. If you remember a few days back here, 3663 produced an X 4.5. Now, 3663 was that sunspot that's off on the northwestern quadrant. Well, it's pretty much out of sight, out of mind now. But prior to that, we've seen an X 5.0, X 6.3 back in February. So things are, appear to be ramping up here recently. And the solar cycle progression chart here is what tells us when the peak of solar cycle 25 should take place. Now, they're still calling for, it looks like it's supposed to be June 2025. We're here at 2024. right about June 2025 is when we're going to peak out in terms of the solar cycle 25. And then we'll start going down into a minimum later, much later in the year time period. I don't want to go to 2032 already. Time's already flying by way too fast, so I don't want that to pick up. But as you can see, we're still way ahead of that in terms of these predicted sunspot number. We went down a little bit, but that's probably going to start coming back up here once things get redone, because this was updated April 3rd. We've had quite a bit of activity here recently. Same for the SFI, the index in terms of the energy being produced out here. Still way ahead. So this will be an interesting solar cycle. See how strong it gets. Again, you know, these flares can get much bigger than what we've seen so far. All right, yep, look at that. Starting to kick back up here on the Auroras. Looks like it's a little bit early, but, you know, this was somewhat forecasted. Not the brunt of it yet. Hopefully that holds off until after it gets dark. So with all this activity, folks, a lot of space weather activity, a lot of proton events coming in, multiple CMEs. You know, this is kind of a rare test to compare the earthquake activity and the space weather relationship. Now, I've seen someone stating here, and there's always going to be people making statements, right, that it's going to take 30 days before we see elevated earthquake activity following the arrival of the CMEs. Well, that doesn't make sense. You know, it really doesn't make sense to put that much of a time frame on it, because I've looked at these records in the past when we've had large CME activity, large proton events, and mainly it seems like it runs about anywhere up to 48 hours out, maybe 72 hours. But to say, yeah, in 30 days we're going to have a large earthquake because of all this space weather activity, that's like saying, well, you know what, somewhere on the planet we're going to have a 6.0 in the next 30 days. Well, duh. Right? I mean, come on. It's like, it doesn't make sense. Why would you say that? It's like, well, I think the sun's going to come up later today. I'm going to bet on that. So to state that is just a little on the foolish side. We'll watch the next 48 hours, 72 hours following the arrival of all this solar weather activity, and then go from there. So what do we got for right now with this? You know, we're just barely seeing some of the CME activity, getting some proton events. Anything big kicking up here overnight? The largest magnitude here from today, it looks like, in the Taiwan area, 5.8. This area is starting to kick back up again here. Seen some activity yesterday. They did see a pretty decent earthquake swarm out here, if you guys remember, in the last 30 days or so. And it actually goes beyond that. When they had that 7-pointer, one could claim that this is just all aftershock activity, but the sequence of events that took place out here did not match typical large event activity followed up by aftershock sequences, you know, days following the main event. This took an odd path. It really started ramping up here a couple weeks ago as well in the Taiwan area, and that had already been weeks after the main quake. It didn't seem normal out here across the Taiwan area in terms of the sequence of earthquakes that took place. And you know, I still think there's probability of seeing something larger. This area has seen an 8-pointer out here just a little further east some time ago, years ago, many years ago. Can't remember the exact date, but you know, there's always some concern that we could see some larger activity out there. And that looks like it's starting to kick back up there again. 5.6 in Papua New Guinea early this morning. Not a big deal. That's, you know, I like to look at these maps and see what may be on the uptick following all this space weather activity. And looking at these maps here over the last couple days with all this X-flare activity, and even overnight, I'm not seeing anything elevated at all for now. But as I've stated here in previous videos, I think that the impact from a CME, a large CME, or a proton event, large proton event, is what we need to watch in terms of triggering earthquakes compared to just flares themselves, right? Because a flare, yes, it is powerful. It takes about 7 minutes for the effects to be felt here on Earth, far as radio blackouts and whatnot go on the sunlit side of the Earth. But it's the plasma cloud, the plasma density that impacts the planet that I think has more of an effect on the tectonics here at the surface level of the plate. So we'll watch for that. But as of right now, in the past few days, with all this X-flare activity, things have been normal. This is very normal to see earthquake activity out here. A 5-pointer in Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, nothing's been elevated. But that could change here with the arrival of the CME activity. San Francisco area, a little small earthquake there, but hey, San Francisco, right? There's many branches here that run off the San Andreas Fault through the Bay Area. A 2.2 on any given day can happen. And that's what we had earlier within the last hour. The rest of California down here really actually looks pretty quiet. There's really not a whole lot going on here. This is very small microquake activity. You take away the small microquakes, and 2.5 and above removes all of those quakes there on the map. Except for a 2.7, that was from yesterday, way off in the Pacific, well off the San Diego area. The rest of the country, Montana, a little earthquake up here, 2.6 from yesterday. Yellowstone, nothing showing up here across the super volcano, but let's just double check, see what we got. This one's not working, that's right. They're offline for some reason. So let's go check out the original one. I'm not for sure what's going on with that site, but are we still live? Looks like we are. What's going on here? Are these guys offline? Did we get the brunt of the CME right now? Who knows? Because that's a little weird. Everything else is working except for Yellowstone stuff. Interesting. All right, I'll have to check back on that a little bit later. But not seeing anything going on here on the seismograph stations here that would indicate any major earthquake activity. Looks pretty quiet. Rest of the country, there's small earthquakes across various oil fields out there in Oklahoma and Texas. And again, the Hawaii area, been watching this, right? Things are calming down for now in terms of earthquake activity around the Kilauea volcano. Let's double check that, make sure we got latest updated information here from the USGS. This update was put out yesterday. They kind of talked about the decline in earthquake activity. I like to check out the information for myself, and you can do that by checking out these graphs, the deformation data, which shows what looks like a little deflationary event going on here in the last 24 hours. This comes after a pretty decent inflation event over the last few days. So the area around the summit is continuing to recharge and, deflate a little bit, but the overall trend here shows inflation, and we're above the previous level of inflation back before the major magma displacement from the summit area back in February. That got displaced from the summit off to the southwest rift zone. Now we're repressurized and watching things pretty closely. Same for up here in Iceland. Earthquake activity, about 32 earthquakes. Eruption has stopped there around the crater area, which is going to be up here. This is a little bit different earthquake activity. There's always earthquake activity out here across these rift boundaries. But we'll know when things are getting ready to pop up, because we'll see hundreds of earthquakes take place in the area where the eruptive fissure activity is going to take place. Right now, not a whole lot there across the Grindavik area or the region of our most recent eruption. As far as the latest informational statement here from these folks, let's see if they put out an update yet or not. This was from 5:10. Oh, goodness, what was that? They're stating that I got a couple different solar alerts on my phone here, and that just went off stating that the solar storm tonight. So even the apps are getting in on it, which is probably good, right? If you have a solar weather alert app, it's good to have on your phone. That way you can get notified when things are kicking up. So, all right. So back to the Iceland activity here. Probability of a new magma flow and another eruption. They're stating right here, most likely it will erupt again on the the crater area, where we've seen the most recent activity there, where we see that long duration event there for almost about 2 months of continuous eruption. There was 3. It dropped down to 1 here in the last few weeks, and that has died out completely as well. The overall trend here of inflation shows that we're fairly well pressurized in the red line here compared to previous eruptions and a repressurization of the area below. So, we're getting to that period right now where things are going to start kicking up and we'll see a new eruption somewhere. But, it'd be good. Definitely good to create, positive thoughts and keep this away from the town or any other populated areas. But it's always a little concerning, that Grindavik down here, this whole area could be involved in fissure activity, eruptive fissure activity. And it's just something we'll have to watch. Again, the key indicator is going to be some earthquake activity, a lot of it in a short amount of time. And as I showed you guys, it's not happening yet. This is nothing. We'll see literally hundreds of earthquakes in a short amount of time. We're talking about 20 or 30 minutes prior to any fissure activity opening up. But the area is well charged, well pressurized. The question is, where is it going to go? I mean, we got to watch it. All right, let me look on the Earthquake 3D globe, see if we're missing anything. I think this thing will be a little bit different tonight and tomorrow in terms of the amount of earthquake activity. There's really not a whole, it may look like a lot, folks, but this is very typical to see earthquake activity in this fashion. Don't let anyone else fool you. It's unfortunately a time when people like to fearmonger and say, look, South America has had a 5.0. What's going on? Well, South America is a major subduction zone area, and a 5-pointer is very, very common. Last 30 days out here of earthquake activity, 4.5 and above. Well, as you can see, this is all typical, very average, up and down that major subduction zone. Look at the world. 4.5 and above in the last 30 days. California, just kind of waiting here. California's been buying a lot of time here recently. All right, what else we got here? Again, let me check out the current Aurora forecast. Oh, man, look at that, kicking up already. I'm hoping this isn't the arrival of the brunt of the system. They weren't really calling for that, but we'll see how this plays out. Either way, areas out there across this region of the world are probably seeing a decent treat in terms of the auroras right now, pending they have clear and dark skies, because that is coming in pretty nicely right now as we speak. That's the 30-minute forecast. And we'll watch that. Let's see, is this the most updated? There's that Proton event that's coming in right now. This is a 3-hour data. Doesn't look like it's registered in yet, but obviously the Aurora forecast model is picking up on the arrival of a CME. I'm hoping it's not the huge brunt of it, but we'll see what happens. We'll check back on this throughout the day and more so at night as well, and see how this plays out. Either way, I think this is the beginning of some interesting activity here tonight. We'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later, folks. I got a fairly busy day here for Friday, but we'll be out here on the side monitoring things and providing updates throughout the day today. Make sure you guys subscribe and please hit that like button. That actually helps us out a lot. So please do so and welcome. We'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later on this evening.